Hi everyone, and welcome to Two-Player Quest. I help you on your quest to find the best two-player board games for you. In today's video, I have Flashpoint Fire Rescue. My version is Dutch, so it's got a slightly different subtitle, but it is Flashpoint Fire Rescue, the game. Now, this is a firefighter game. So you play as a group of firefighters tasked with basically getting everybody out of this burning building alive. It is up to you to rescue the victims, stop the fire from spreading too far, and getting yourself out on time as well. But how many firefighters do you need, and how many firefighters does it take to get an interesting game out of it? Well, let's explore. Flashpoint is a game for 2 to 6 players that plays in about 45 minutes. It's at a 2.22 on Board Game Geek for complexity, so it's a relatively easy game to play, and I would say it is a medium luck game. It is partially strategy, which you can discuss with your fellow players, but on the other part it is dice rolling for where the fire is going to spread. And in more difficult scenarios, you place hotspots, which means if you roll that hotspot, you get fire there, but you also have to roll again. And once you have more hotspots and you start rolling them more often, if you keep rolling them, you've lost the game. This is what the board can look like at the start of a 2-player game. Now, this is the family setup, the very first setup there is. You can also roll for your setups, but for this video, I thought it might be a good idea to quickly just do the family setup, the very first setup, the easiest setup. Now, you can see you have doors that are closed. We have fire on the map, and we have certain points of interest or persons of interest. I have set up the board with all the extras, so we have the dangerous equipment, we have the other poise, we have extra action points for when you spare them, we have the structure cubes, and we have fire and smoke cubes, and the medical tokens if you've healed someone, and the dice, of course. Now here we have the player's card. In your turn, you can see on your character sheet how many action points you have and what special abilities you have. So for example, this doctor has 4 action points. So you can use up to 4 action points of doing stuff. For example, you can move for an action point. So in this case, we are playing blue. So we move blue into the door 1 spot. If you wanted to move into fire, that would cost you 2 action points. It also costs you 2 action points to move 1 spot with a person of interest or a poisonous substances token. You can open and close doors for 1, so you can open a door, close a door. This helps with the spreading of the fire later on. You could also, for example, try to, for 1 spot, you can turn the fire into smoke, and for another AP, you can turn smoke into nothing. Or you can decide to chop into the walls. So you would place one of the structure cubes there to do so. You can also choose to move around either the ambulance or the fire engine. You need these to pick up your persons of interest once they are outside. You can also choose to switch. So you can take one of the other cards. This costs you 2 AP as well. Or if someone is on the fire engine, they can use the fire engine's hose to make a lot of fire disappear. Once you've used up to your max AP, whatever you haven't used, you can save for next round. So for example, they decided to use 3, they can save 1 extra for next round. Then it is time to expand the fires. So let's say this player did 1, 2, 3, 4, and looked what this was. Now, this is a decoy. So this is a false alarm. There's nothing there. You would take this off of the board and you'd roll for a new person of interest in a moment. First, you roll for extra fire. So here we roll 6, 4. So then you look for 6, 4, which there is no fire adjacent because there are walls, and here there is nothing adjacent. So 6, 4 is smoke in this case. Then you would have other things like explosions if you rolled one of the fires. And at this point, you would roll the dice again. So 3, 3, which at the moment is in fire. So then you follow the arrows, 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 arrows. So there is a person of interest there. And then it is the next player's turn to do their action phase, spreading the fire and filling the person of interest if they are used. Now, the game ends if the house basically collapses. If all of these structure cubes are placed on the board, once the last one is placed, you are at the end of the game. You win if you've saved 7 or more victims. So for example, this is a dog. So in this case, you would want to save that dog. You have to bring it outside safely, for example, through here and then through here. Once you've done that 7 times, then you win and you would place them there. Or you lose if 4 or more victims have gone missing, and that is the game of Flashpoint. I would say it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to teach new players this game, of course depending on their level of experience with board games, but in general it will not take you long for you to be able to start playing this game. Flashpoint is quite similar to Pandemic, so if you like games like Pandemic, then this will be a good extra version for you to have. It's an easy co-op game which is easy to bring to the table and simple to learn. So in general, I would say it's quite good for players who are newer in the board game world, have more issues with complex board games, or are perhaps a bit younger. I have cousins who like playing this who are about 7 and 8. So in general, it is good for those kinds of players. It can be the main attraction of a board game night, or it can be a filler game. We usually use it as a filler game when it comes to the big board game nights, but in general, it can be both. Now, this is the kind of game in which you can have a dominant player. So if you don't want a dominant player or you don't like those kinds of games, then this is not the right fit for you. We like Flashpoint. We think it's a good game to have on hand for playing with people who are less experienced, but it is still equally as fun for those experienced players to play as well. So we find it's great for family gatherings, friends who are less experienced, stuff like that. We really like this game. We like that there are also levels in this game, so you have sort of difficulty levels. You can play normal mode, you can play heroic, which also makes it more fun when you have played this game a few times to keep it interesting. And there are also expansions to this game that make it really fun. In general, I say this is a wonderful game to have in your cupboard, and I think it's a really cool game, but in this case, I should probably say this game is Fire, because that would be more fitting in this case. The game scales well at pretty much every player count. As with Pandemic, this game makes it worse after every turn. So it doesn't matter how many players you play with, it still gets equally as bad. Now, it does get easier with more players in general, because there is more ground covered. You don't have to use those actions to move to get to the other side of the board. Plus, they have 8 different character cards and what they can do, and the specializations are very different in this game. Pandemic's still sort of quite similar. In this case, they're very different and they do very different things. So having more players that can specialize in their different thing is very useful. So in general, I would say it is a good 2-player game, but it also certainly works good at 4 and 6. And with 6, it also doesn't take too much longer, which I also think is a wonderful thing to have. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching our review of Flashpoint. If you want to see another one of my reviews, you can click up here. If you have any comments, feedback, or suggestions, feel free to put them down below, and I look forward to seeing you next time on 2-Player Quest.